The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Starting next week, you'll be able to catch all of our shows on TikTok. I'm hoping that Washington will get this all taken care of, but we've had so many people request that we put our shows on TikTok. It won't be the whole show, but it'll be about the first 5 minutes. So you'll be seeing a lot of those starting next week. We have a great show for you this afternoon. We're talking about taking a sore subject and turning it into a positive subject. We have one of the top tax relief attorneys in the United States. Let me welcome Stephen Moskowitz. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Steve-O. Thanks so much for such a ringing endorsement. I'll do my best to live up to it.
Let me tell you something. Your knowledge, and Stephen, I guess I'm going to call it your bedside manner. The way you project, the way you talk about tax relief, it really takes a lot of the pain off of someone's shoulders. If I had a tax problem and I would be so worried about it, and I came down and sat with you, I would come out of that meeting feeling so much better, and that I didn't have to worry anymore, knowing that you are going to find a way in your bag of goodies to take care of it. So that's my endorsement of you. We are so glad to have you.
And that's
Tell people about your practice.
I'm the head of our law firm. And before I was a tax attorney, I was a CPA. And our law firm does everything in tax. So that's income tax return preparation, helping people that haven't filed tax returns for years, people that owe some money and they can't pay it, and that's true whether it's the federal or state or other taxing authority. Audits, and we deal with all types. There's the most common audit is the income tax audit. But there's payroll tax audits when there's a fight over, well, wait a minute, is that person you paid an independent contractor that you have no tax duty to, or are they really your employee where you have all kinds of duties to them? And then we're talking about sales tax audits, and also far more recently, we call them special audits, like if you receive PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, or ERC, Employee Retention Credit. And then what we call business services, things that go with it. For example, the federal government in their infinite wisdom started still another law, as if we need some more, effective January 1st, 24. Called the Corporate Transparency Act. But the Corporate Transparency Act, and you know what? The big corporations are exempted from it. It's the little guy that has to comply with it. And I'll bet you there's an awful lot of little guys that never heard about it. But guess what? If you don't do it, they put a criminal punishment on this one. They could actually put you in prison for not filing this. And the penalty on the financial side is $500 a day, up to 10 grand. So the bottom line is once again, the government started something new and they have these grossly disproportionate dystopian penalties. But the bottom line is that's the law and you better do it or else. So one of the things we do is we say, well, okay, we can do all this for you so you don't have to be hit with all those punishments. And by the way, while we're in there, a lot of small businesses never bother with the normal corporate formalities. And so what? You have some guy, and I remember, I'll never forget, a client said to me, corporate formalities, you mean I have to have a meeting with myself? That's ridiculous. What do you mean a meeting? I own the whole thing. I have to have a meeting with myself? What's up with that? And we said, well, here's the deal. Yes, you do, and here's why. The main reason people choose the corporate form is for something called limited liability. So suppose you have a grocery store, and your grocery store orders all types of products from the vendors, and let's say things don't work out so well for you and you can't pay your bills. Your maximum loss is the entity, is the corporation, not your personal assets. They can't come after you personally. That's why most people become corporations. But the first thing the enemy lawyer does, that's the bad lawyer, the lawyer on the other side, says, Your Honor, let's see, did the defendant comply with the corporate formalities? I.e. having the meeting with yourself, from my client's words. And if you don't, then the enemy lawyer says, okay, Your Honor, the defendant didn't act like a corporation, therefore, he doesn't deserve the protections of a corporation. Therefore, let me add all his personal assets. And you have to be really careful because one lawsuit can ruin your life. One lawsuit can wipe out the work and earnings and savings of a lifetime. And don't expect the other side to have any mercy on you. They don't care. They'll take everything you have. So the bottom line is these things are so important. So we go ahead and package it. And then there's other things we do. For example, with estate planning, there's some things you can do in your estate can save you a ton of income taxes. And then we also talk about accounting because, a lot of small businesses, a business owner is really busy. He or she starts early in the morning and late at night, their biggest decision is, should I get something to eat or should I go right to bed? They're not thinking, well, now I'm going to take care of some formalities and do my accounting, and they don't do it. And again, one of the things I like to think is I deal in real life. I'm practical. When I first started out in my career, the day you open the door, the clients aren't fighting with each other to hire you. So I was a professor at night. And I would tell the new budding lawyers and say, look, this is, at least my class, this is not a bunch of dusty old law books where you're reading some cases from England and learning some new words. The law lives. It breathes, it cries, it screams, it laughs. You're dealing with people's lives, but I deal with real life. And when I talk with a client, I don't give them something fancy that's, nice theoretically on paper or would save them $3. But practical. That's one of the things that I like to offer clients, practicality. And that's what we're dealing with here. So for an awful lot of clients, it's really practical not to try to do your own accounting. And initially people think, oh, well, I'm stuck with doing that to do my taxes, right? Well, yes, that's part of it, doing your taxes, but also for control of the business, because with control of the business, not only do we want to save you money on your taxes, we want to see you earn more profits, and then we'll save you money on those taxes. And we show you how to control the business. And the other thing you do is we set up systems so you have information at your fingertips. If you ask a lot of small business owners a question about their business, like today it's March, and if you said to a lot of small business owners, so we're almost finished with the first quarter of the year, how much profit have you made so far? Most of them would say, I don't know. What they know is I'm telling you from real life, boots on the ground in the trenches. And what most business owners know is the balance in their checking account. Everybody knows that one, or almost everybody. The balance in the checking account. Did you make a profit? I don't know. How much does so-and-so cost you? I don't know. That shouldn't be the case. So what we do is we put all this information at your fingertips, and then you're not at anybody's mercy, including ours. Somebody asks you a question, or you want to know, You touch a button, oh, that's how much it is. And all the things are related and they all help each other. Obviously, good records help your taxes, but they also help you make more money. And then you adjust your behavior, you measure things, you make things more efficient, and you make more money. So they all go together. The bottom line is we handle your taxes, business advising, and then we'll say, and much like a medical doctor, if you start going to the medical doctor, the things he or she looks for when you're age 19 are different when you're age 59. They look for different things at 59 than they do at 19. Well, that's true with us as your business grows, because a lot of times we'll say to a client, now you should be considering X. Is that new? No, but you didn't need it before. Now you do. So we go over this, and there's so many tax saving programs. What people don't realize is that there's so many rich treasures in the tax law. And you take a look at it. I look at the Fortune 500 companies and the really wealthy people. Look at these companies making billions and paying little or nothing in taxes. You read about it every year in the newspaper. How can that be? Because our tax law is filled with incentives. But just like going on a treasure hunt, you have to know where those treasures are buried. Kind of like you ever go to the beach and you see a guy with a metal detector who's walking along the sand looking for
Yes.
jewelry and coins and all those things. If you look at the sand, there's nothing visible. But someplace under the sand, that metal detector says, oh, wait a minute, there's a platinum ring here that's worth a lot of money. Well, that's what we are in looking at the tax code. With that metal detector, there's so many good benefits, and we want to take advantage of them. And that's why I became a tax attorney. The benefits are not limited to the Fortune 500. They're available for everybody, but you have to know them. In our system, the government doesn't say, well, here's this benefit or that benefit. The bottom line is that you have to know where these benefits are, and that's our job to tell you, and then give you guidance with things. So, and you'll see a lot of these things go together. Sometimes you'll have people that are saying, well, they want to retire and they want to give the business to the kids or sell it to the kids or sell it to the highest bidder or sell it to a particular person. We help you with all that, including the tax strategies that go along with it. Because a lot of times you can get a chunk of money, which is nice, but then the government wants a chunk of taxes. So we work on that too. And because we are tax attorneys and lawyers, we can help you with all the things that go along with it. So what I would like, a lot of things where they'll tell you have something plus, we're tax attorneys plus. There's a lot of things we can do to help you. And that includes, now that you've decided to move on, what do you do with that money? For example, suppose you have this situation. Suppose you've been a landlord all your life and you say, I've done something called a 1031 exchange. Well, what's that? So suppose you have a building, you bought a building, and in previous episodes, we've talked about cost segregation analysis, where we increase our depreciation, save taxes. And then we have our building. We say, things have gone well. I want to buy a bigger building. One thing you could do is sell the first building you have and buy the second building. The problem is, if you sell building one, you pay capital gains tax on that.
Yes.
So better than that, you say, okay, I'm going to do a 1031 exchange. What's that? Well, you trade. So the bottom line is you say, okay, I'm going to trade my old smaller building for my second building. It'll be a bigger building, and I only have to make up the difference between the value of my building and the value of building two with some money. And then you say, well, now I have building two, and that's work. Well, I want building three, and so on and so forth. And now you're on building 19, you have a big building, and you say, this is terrific. But now the time has come, the years have been good to you, and now it's time to sit on the beach and watch the ocean waves come in and out. And you say, you don't want to be a landlord anymore. So you say, well, all right, I want to divest myself of building 19. But if I sell it, there's going to be a tremendous tax. And yes, I could exchange it, but then I'm still a landlord. I don't want to be a landlord. There's a way that you can essentially get out of that building, get into a stock portfolio, and still get 1031 treatment? And you say, wait a minute, Steve, didn't you keep up with the tax law, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? Because I know that you can only do 1031s for real estate transactions now, not anything else. And I said, well, yes, I'm very familiar with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that passed some years ago. But like everything else in law, there's some exceptions. And there's an exception in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that even though you can only do real estate transactions, there's some stock portfolios that you can get qualified for this. And the bottom line is this: you divest yourself of the building. Now you're an investor, you have a stock portfolio, but you haven't paid any taxes because this stock portfolio qualifies for non-taxable exchange. And then now think about it. If you just sold the building, let's assume you said, that's it, the proceeds of the building, that's going to be my life's retirement. You pay a huge tax in the year you sell it, and you're not going to spend that money all in that year. That's money you're going to hold on to for the rest of your life, but a big chunk of taxes went. So imagine instead if you had a stock portfolio that qualified under this. And then you sell the stock as you need to over the years, and you only pay the taxes on the stock you've sold. The rest is tax-free. And one of my favorites, if you didn't do this, on the money that you would have given to the IRS, you have an investment that's paying you money. So again, you're not a landlord anymore, but now you're getting earning from an investment that you otherwise wouldn't have had because you paid the taxes. These are all things we help people with.
Wow.
I could
You know
go
what
on,
else, Steve?
Yeah.
You really, someone who tries to handle this himself versus retaining your services, if they try to handle it themselves, they are not playing on a level playing field.
Well, here's the problem. Theoretically, you can do anything you want to do. You could defend, if you're accused of murder, Steve-O, you have the absolute right to defend yourself. But if somebody came to me as a tax attorney, I'm still an attorney, and said, you know what, they were just accused of murder. I had a case like that. One of the clients was accused of murder, and he asked me to do his trial. And I said, well, thank you for the faith and confidence you've placed in me, because you literally are putting your life in my hands. But I'm a tax attorney. I've never done a murder case. And I am concerned, even if I devoted all my time to your case, I don't have any experience in that. There's so much I don't know. You would suffer so horribly. So I referred him to somebody that specialized in that. And by the way, the guy got off. And what happened was, it's like a medical doctor. If you go to a medical doctor, they're still a doctor, but they don't work in your area of the body. So they say, I have a friend that does work in your area. You're better off with him or her. So the bottom line is, yes, sometimes people do represent themselves. And have I ever seen a case where somebody represented him or herself and done fine? Yes, I have. But on the other side of the bell-shaped curve, I've actually seen people represent themselves and wind up getting criminally charged. Criminally charged. Now, those are the extremes. That's the tails of the bell-shaped curve. But most people, it makes a huge difference what you do. It's kind of like smoking. There's a few people that start smoking when they're 12, and 100 years later, they're still healthy. And there's somebody else that never smoked and only ate salad and drops dead in their mid-30s. Although they exist, those are the tails of the bell-shaped curve. Most people, and again, I'm not giving medical advice, I'm not a medical doctor, but I think we'd all agree, most people would say if you smoke or you don't smoke, is going to make a major difference in your health. And that's why we have dedicated our professional lives to this. And it's just like a professional heavyweight boxer. Nobody but another professional heavyweight boxer better get in the ring with him. For example, if the tough guy from the local bar decides to get in the ring with the heavyweight professional, the tough guy from the bar is going to get killed because he's just not at that level. So the bottom line is, I would like to think that we provide an awful lot of help and guidance and experience to a client, and in telling them things like, you don't want to do that, you don't want to do that. this has some problems. This has, in your case, the best thing to do is here. Just like going into a pharmacy and trying to choose an over-the-counter medication for yourself. You're probably better off if a physician examined you first and then said, well, do you need any medication at all? And if you do, here's what I'd recommend.
Hey, just try getting a hold of the IRS. You can. You, Stephen Moskowitz, can, but as a layperson, try getting a hold of them.
So there's two problems there. One, if you get a hold of them and ask for their advice, and you follow their advice to the letter, unless you get the advice in writing, and most people don't, they're not bound by it. So if you swear up and down, well, Agent John Smith told me to do X, you have it in writing? Nope, too bad. And they penalize you.
Wow.
And the other thing is you're talking about, a lot of people complain bitterly. They're on the telephone line for hours and they can't get through to the IRS. And again, in the general newspapers, the IRS has acknowledged that most of the calls they don't answer. Well, okay.
Wow.
So what magic do we, how is it when Steve's law firm phones the IRS, we can get through, and when John Smith calls the IRS, you can't? Why? Because special numbers are provided to tax professionals. Only tax professionals can use them. So that's how we can get through and the non-tax professional can't. Just all kinds of benefits. And plus, let's face it, we've dedicated our professional lives to this. What's that, Steve?
Something else your firm does, and I don't think a lot of people realize, if you haven't filed your taxes, and they tell you, they send you how much you owe, that's a gross amount. They don't know what your deductions are, and they're not going to do them for you. Whereas your firm will have to recreate those, won't they?
So you're just talking about something called SFRs, substitute for returns. If you don't file a tax return, there's two punishments. One, the IRS can put you in prison for 1 year for every year you don't file up to 6 years. Remember when you and I were little boys and Wesley Snipes had his tax problem?
Yes.
We were very little boys then, remember?
Yes.
And I remember my kindergarten class teacher talking about the Wesley Snipes case. And what happened is that Wesley was sentenced to federal prison for 3 years for the 3 years of income taxes that he didn't file. So, I mean, it does happen. You don't want it to happen, but it does. And that's the criminal punishment. The civil punishment, the government does these SFRs, substitutes for return. They'll make something up. Let me give you an example. Suppose you sold $1 million worth of stock that cost you $1.1 million. The tax on that zero, you lost $100,000. But the IRS doesn't know or care about the cost piece. They say, so Steve-O, didn't report your stock sales, huh? Okay, we know how to fix you, buddy. And they tax you on the 1 million gross revenue. And you say, wait a minute, Mr. IRS. True, I had a gross revenue of $1 million, but you see the cost that went along with that was $1.1 million. I actually lost $100,000, so I don't owe you any tax. So we do a lot of cases of people who don't file returns, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 5, 10, or more. And one of the first things we do is get all their records and go about canceling the SFRs and doing real tax returns.
Well, as always, Stephen, our show goes by so fast with you. Let's give everybody who's listening on radio your phone number and your website address.
Call us toll free at 888-TAX-DEAL. That's 888-TAX-DEAL, 888-TAX-DEAL, or visit us online at moskowitzllp.com, MOSKOWITZ-LLP.com. Steve-O, thanks very much. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, buddy. That's Attorney Stephen Moskowitz. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.